Hello, historians. Today I'm going to tell you the story of Kissin and the 15th Arizona legislature, and I want you to follow along. As always, I am your host and professor, Dr. Summer Sherland. Do you ever wonder how Arizona selected Phoenix as the state capital? Well, I'm going to tell you a tall tale, one that has been popularized by our state historian, Marshall Trimble. It's the story of Kissin, a vain legislator, and the battle for the capital city in Arizona territory. So I want you to take a piece of paper and I want you to fold it in half, or you can draw a line down the middle. Go, hot dog, not hamburger. On one side, I want you to write the words biographical details. And on the other, I want you to write the word context, just like this, biographical details and context. Very good. So the goal of today's story is for you to listen and be entertained, of course, but also you're trying to engage in the content. You're trying to figure out which part of this story that is all woven together is about the history, right? The context, the surrounding historical forces that influenced or framed what's happening in this very unique situation. And that's the stuff that you're going to put in the context column. So historically relevant dates and locations and descriptions. On the other side, where you're writing biographical details, you're trying to identify unique aspects of the story that are unique and related to the specific people in the story. So I'll be honest with you, there's not a ton of biographical information out there about Kissin. So it's a little scant as you listen to the story. But there's lots of information about the people, right? The different people and their lifestyles that could show up in the biographical details category. So your job is to try and see how I've woven these things together to make a historical story, all right? Let's do it. So as I read, try and write down any biographical details that you hear or see and any contextual details or historical context information that you glean. And just follow along, pause as you need to, try and get as much in each column as possible. Here we go. It's 1889, more than 20 years since the American Civil War has ended, and Arizona is still a Union territory. It has still not been awarded American statehood. For years, the towns of Tucson and Prescott had battled for control of the territorial capital. But remember, Arizona territory didn't look like it does now. Draw a picture in your head of Arizona on a map. You're probably seeing generally a vertical rectangle with the northern border touching Utah, the southern border touching Mexico, the western border touching California, and the eastern border touching New Mexico. But Arizona didn't always look like that. It actually used to be short and fat, right? Instead of tall and skinny. Arizona territory once stretched from the eastern border of today's New Mexico all the way to California. And it took up the bottom half of what is now Arizona and New Mexico. New Mexico, on the other hand, took up the top half of the two states. So this is how Tucson, at the southernmost portion of Arizona, established dominance before and during the American Civil War. But in 1863, the United States, then the Union, declared Arizona a territory. And that's when it took on the shape that we know of as today, kind of the long and skinny rectangle. This new Arizona territory encapsulated the powerful mining, ranching, and railroad town of Prescott, Arizona. Citizens and lawmakers of Tucson and Prescott immediately began fighting for control of the territory. And the biggest prize, they believed, was the territorial capital. The capital then bounced back and forth between the two cities for the first 20 years or so of territorial history. So before I tell you about Kissin, I wanted to tell you about one of the most interesting sessions in Arizona territorial history, the 13th session in Prescott in 1885. The citizens of Tucson raised a satchel full of money, like a bag, and they told their delegates to go to Prescott for the 13th legislature and bring home the capital, and that nothing else would be accepted. Meanwhile, other delegates were planning to play their own cards. Pinal County wanted a bridge across the Gila River. while the northern part of Cochise County wanted to secede from the territory. In Maricopa, the town of Tempe wanted a normal school, and the brand new kind of emerging township of Phoenix wanted a mental health facility. They called it an insane asylum. Tucson, of course, wanted to relocate the capital, but at this time, Prescott was the capital and they wanted to retain it. Well, Marshall Trimble says Mother Nature, as she often does, intervened. A flood on the Salt River forced the Pima County delegates to travel by train at Maricopa to Los Angeles, then back to Ash Fork, 50 miles north of Prescott, and then take a stagecoach back to the capital. But a snowstorm held up their stage in Hell's Canyon. So one of the delegates, a man named Bob Leatherwood, took the satchel of money and rode a mule to Prescott. But by the time his ride was over, all political trades had already been made and prizes handed out. Prescott remained the capital. Pinal got their bridge. Cochise was told, no, you can't secede. Tempe got its school and Phoenix got its asylum. But then the delegates realized they had left Tucson out. And so they awarded the only thing left on the table, which was a university, the University of Arizona. Well, Leatherwood cried, we don't want a university. He said he was a saloon owner. He said, students don't drink. I'm not going to make any money on college students. When he returned, angry citizens of Tucson were faced with this news. And apparently they hurled rotten eggs and tomatoes at their delegates, and one even threw a dead cat. They had sent politicians to Prescott with over $4,000 in public funds and had returned nothing that attracted Tucson voters. So that's the story of how University of Arizona was awarded to Tucson. Okay, but I promised you a story about a woman named Kissin Jenny and the Phoenix, like how Phoenix became the capital. So 4 years later, during the 15th legislature, the capital was again up for grabs. There was this recent upstart city on the banks of the Salt River, Phoenix, and they decided to make a play. People called Phoenix way out east. It wasn't the Central Valley yet. Like it was called this, like it was considered this sort of eastern outpost, and nobody really took it seriously. But what happened was a bunch of backroom deals led to the discussion or the decision of Phoenix becoming the state capital. Maricopa County, and Maricopa County encircles Phoenix Township, made a deal with a certain lady of the evening. They called her a prostitute then, she was a sex worker, named Kissin Jenny. Now, Jenny was very popular. She was a lady of the night who worked in Prescott at the time on Whiskey Row. And Prescott was kind of this Wild West town, as you would picture it. Whiskey Row was a whole street of saloons in downtown Prescott and brothels, and that's where Jenny worked. So these Maricopa County delegates bribed Jenny, and they talked her into detaining or distracting one of the legislators from Yavapai County. Now, Yavapai County is the county that encircles Prescott. Okay, so the capital city's up for grabs. Prescott is currently the capital of the territory. Phoenix wants to be the new capital. So they talked Jenny into delaying one of the Yavapai Prescott, right, delegates to keep him from actually showing up for the vote, if you're getting my hint. They obviously assumed that this Yavapai delegate would vote for Prescott if he was at the session. So if Jenny could just distract him during the vote, then he wouldn't be there and they would have more votes for Phoenix than there were for Prescott. This man in question wore a glass eye. Now, it was 1889, so a glass eye would have been very unusual and very expensive. And according to legend, this glass eye was the only one in all of Arizona territory. And so this Yavapai delegate was very proud of his glass eye. Apparently he would never go anywhere without it. It was his point of pride. And at the same time, this man from Yavapai was also known for his specific proclivity for Kissin Jenny. So the night after the assembly first convened, the Prescott delegate, the Yavapai delegate, headed over to Kissin Jenny's place for some evening entertainment. Legend has it that he had his frolic with Jenny and afterwards placed his glass eye in a water glass next to the bed and went to sleep. Well, Jenny, remember, had been bribed by Maricopa to find a way to keep this guy away from the vote the next day. So Jenny, feigning thirst, reached over and drank the contents of the water glass, eye and all. The next morning, the delegate woke and could not see his eye in the water glass because it was empty. So he freaked out and refused to go out in public without his glass eye. This meant, of course, that he would miss the territorial capital vote. Well, the other Yavapai delegates noticed that this man was missing, but they figured he was probably just over at Jenny's sleeping in. So they ran to her place, and this is right before the vote for the capital city is about to take place. And the Yavapai delegates discovered that he wouldn't come out because he's missing his eye. For whatever reason, the Yavapai delegates to figure out that Jenny has swallowed this glass eye. So they tried to force her to produce it. So either, throw it up or whatever. And she wouldn't or couldn't help them. So in their laser focused panic, they're over here fighting with Jenny, trying to get her to upchuck the glass eye. And what they didn't realize was that they were all, not just one delegate, but all the Yavapai delegates were missing the territorial capital vote. So what happens was Tucson, who had fewer delegates than Phoenix, loses the territorial state or territorial capital to Phoenix because Prescott, who had outnumbered Phoenix, was not even in attendance to vote. So this is how in 1889, Phoenix, which people called way out east, won the county seat and the territorial capital. All right, so what did you get? Right, there was a lot more context in this one than there was biographical details, but you probably got some things on Jenny, you probably got a few things on the legislator, you probably got a few things on the Yavapai and Maricopa delegates, maybe something on Bob Leatherwood. We will see. All right, everybody, I can't wait to see what you came up with.